tragedies that I could not, like when I close my eyes at night, I could not unsee it. But for some reason, I'm still here. And like I think about that stuff every day when I'm walking around. And I think about all the lives that I've seen just disappear like that. And I'm sad, but I don't carry that with me. I take them with me in my breath and in my stories, in my art.
So why don't we open this up? Folks have any questions? Come on, Gavin. I know you.
I'm just.
What brought you here?
I wanted to kind of learn about like a different way of living life, and I lived in Seattle and for a long time and part of the music scene many years ago, and I had met some travelers there, and I kind of was curious to hear about your story and the story of it. It's really fascinating. You're really good at communicating like what brought you into this life and what keeps you in it and what magic you find in it. So it's really interesting. I'm just kind of like listening in, like, and it's really sweet.
Well, I'm curious, and you might have already said this already, but it was hard to hear you. How about the basics of life for travelers? I'm really curious. How do you deal with the things that we do every day? Maybe when we travel, just the real basic, like food and water and cleansing. And did you already talk about this? Oh, okay. I'm really curious about that because so often, I mean, I lived in San Francisco for many years, and I used to just walk around there. It's a little different now, but and I always wonder. And you usually hear, "Oh, I've been years."
Yeah.
Years, and that always baffles me.
Yeah. Well, so like you can
I wonder if
travel.
you could just speak up just a
You
little
can.
bit.
Most people, some people have like 80-liter backpacks. Some people have 20-liter backpacks. Some of my friends have no gear. It's kind of fun to go gearless and fearless. It really humbles you as a person.
Right.
It's really scary. That's how I started on the road. I had nothing. I had nothing but the clothes on my back and an empty backpack. And like you get really good over the years learning the necessities that you personally need as a human
Like
to
for
survive in this
example,
world.
how would
Like,
you get what of your basic?
my backpack right now is like I got a sleeping mat because I'm sick of sleeping on the ground. You need some insulation. I got a sleeping bag. I need a down sleeping bag. Down sleeping bags are where it's at because they stay really warm. You get a little tarp, some rope, maybe a mosquito net. You don't really need one. But other than that, food, it's like you gotta eat what's good for you. You gotta treat your body right if you're gonna be pushing yourself to these extremes. Like I've walked from the Canadian Rockies to Vancouver. I've walked all over the fucking place. You gotta treat your body right. I've done it just running on pizza bones. Like I've ridden a beach cruiser all the way down the coast of California, just eating pizza scraps out the dumpster. Like that really hurt my body. But like you gotta treat your body right. And like you gotta learn how to ration. It's like you're a soldier in the old times. Like you gotta ration your chocolate, ration your cigarettes. Like you gotta like wait for your train. And sometimes your train doesn't show up. Sometimes it takes 5 or 6 extra days to get there because there's strikes going on. You're not a high priority. You gotta get good at it, or else you're gonna die. It's resilience. Like I've been there with no food, no water on the side of the highway, walking, shaking an empty jug, but like.
Shaking an empty
shaking an empty water jug. I'm so tall, people don't want to pick me up when I'm walking down the highway like this because I have a backpack and I usually look really scary because I have like all my clothes on and a banjo, so I gotta like shake my jug at people. But like you learn how to be resourceful, and there's dumpsters everywhere. People throw out all sorts of good food that's not even bad yet. It's just the packaging looks weird. You gotta be resourceful. It's not illegal to go through the dumpsters. Human right. You gotta have water. You gotta get a water key because some people just lock faucets, and I think everybody should have water. Get a filter if you're scared. I've gotten Giardia a couple of times. I've been through forest fires and drinking really nasty water here, and like almost died in Portland before. But like I'm still here because I treat my body right. The pillow. I travel with the pillow now. I like pillows. And then like your phone and stuff and notebook and whatever makes you as a traveler, is your art, your instrument, your 6 dogs, whatever. I traveled with a cat for about 1.5 years.
Oh wow.
He went with me everywhere.
You've talked about, you mentioned lovers and friends, and so is everyone, do you build a community of X number of people knowing that you're going to take care of each other? Is that like, I'm fascinated by the confidence you have of like, I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna survive.
My first couple years, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't have like, I had friends, but they weren't homies, they weren't family. And it took like a bunch of like trial and error, heartbreak until I found my squad. And like, I love my friends so much, like I would do anything for them.
And do you stick together, or do you just know where you are?
We know where we are. Like sometimes we'll all move in a pack, sometimes we'll all move individually. Like I came here with my friend Will. He's been pushing around a piano in the city for as long as like he can remember. He plays in this really cool band called the Dirty Rotten Vipers, and I make the merchandise. There's 12 of us. We all met in the streets of New Orleans, and I got in Will's car and drove 36 hours here with him and his dog and all of our junk. Because we lit, and then we fixed up a sailboat and we lived in the harbor out there. And in the past like 2 weeks, like 10 of the band members who showed up from New Orleans and Minneapolis and all these other places just to find their community of people and play music and spread their art and their message of the world. We always find each other. Once you find, it's like when you see a poet, once you interact, you can see traveling and doing kids all over the place, but you gotta interact. You gotta cross that bridge. It might be scary, but cross that bridge. A kid with face tattoos might be the sweetest like angel you've ever met in your life. You gotta cross that bridge and like jump over that gap. So once you like interact with us, you'll start seeing us everywhere. We're all over the place.
Very true.
I'm very interested because I keep hearing a lot of fluid boundaries, and I'm wondering, Michael, how you decide you have a group of photographs are ready to tell a story in a printed book.
Good question. In the beginning, when I started working on this, it was similar to what you're hearing. It may be new to you, and you're like, "This is so intriguing. I'm so interested, and I'm so drawn in. I want to know more." And so it's meeting one person, learning that story, meeting another person, learning that story. But then all of a sudden, it became relationships, and you see people grow and change, and then you make more photographs over time, and it's seeing someone, 3 years later, 5 years later, 7 years later. Everyone today thinks that they're taking pictures and putting them up on Instagram and doing it so quickly, but what happened to time? So time tells the story. And then I got so involved, all of a sudden I became a very small part of the community, going to the memorials, and I was asked by a parent to help arrange one for her son that had passed away, and all of a sudden I'm like, uh-oh, this is different. I'm getting ashes mailed to me at my home, and this is the person I just photographed. What's happening here? And I'm becoming part of that story. And so I felt my responsibility was to then tell that story. And as people started to pass away, and I had all of this collected, audio and the photographs, I was like, this needs to be put into a book that can become a document. And so that's why I decided to make a book. The book goes from people just figuring out that they want to go on the road, all the way to the lessons that they learned when they got off of the road and settled down however many years later. And like Ground Score was saying, a lot of these people aren't here, but we can, as just humans, learn from other humans, what their story is. And that's why I decided to kind of put it together as a solid book. We need more things, that we can hold on to. And it's great to be able to scroll through pictures, but we can't read them and go and really look at them as a whole. So.
Travelers in the 30s. And
Could you speak up just a little bit?
Yeah, I sort of mentioned travelers in the 30s and kind of what that was like, or what brought that about, and then in the 50s and the 60s and later in the East Village. So, sort of two questions. So, did you see differences in the decade that you were photographing? Like, were there changes? And then, what do you anticipate going forward? What would it look like?
Yeah, one is a kind of tail end on your question. One of the reasons I said, this might be the time to close it off, was because when I started to meet a traveler in New Orleans or wherever, I would go to introduce myself, and they'd be like, I don't know who you are. Versus 3 years before that, like, oh my God, you're that guy. And like, do you know this person? And I talked to that person. I saw you at the memorial 3 years ago. So I was like, oh, things are changing. And then I noticed that social media got, I don't know if you agree with this, got very much wrapped into the lifestyle a little bit too much. You know,
What's that mean?
Not good.
I said, you know, there was a traveler who said, I'm going live on TikTok now. And it's like, okay, well, this is different. And then a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more.
We us travelers, we don't fuck with that. With the kids that go on the TikTok, that is blowing up the spot. That's number one rule.
Yeah. So, and also, you know, a lot of the newer travelers or older travelers will say that newer ones they're messy. They leave things behind.
They totally are. Oogle is I think it's an endearing term. I love being called an oogle, but it can also be a derogatory term. It's just like the definition of like, you know, your average gutter punk kid who's like drinking a whole bunch all the time and kind of off his rails a little bit. Like that's what we call them. They're like they're ooging out a little too hard. You can get drunk. You can do whatever you want. Just clean up after yourself.
Yeah. So.
Is this an American story, or is this happening worldwide to some degree or another?
Great question. For what I look at it as it's an American story in the sense of the sense of exploration and heading out west and you know where we are from our roots, right? So we started one place and we had to explore and move and change. In Europe, and all over the world, there are travelers. It's just a little different. What do you think?
Well, America, we have like the hobo culture. They don't have that anywhere else in the world. They don't have there's not as many there's rail lines out in Europe and stuff. They don't like span through like every country, like every state and city like they do here. And it's really cool. I've never been to Europe, but I have a lot of European friends. I hope to get my passport this year. I've been to a couple of countries illegally, which is really fun. But that's a really fun thing to say when you're talking to the border patrol. They don't really care. They don't really ask you too many questions. But there's in like Europe, there's a lot of squatters. There are train riders, but it's very rare. There's a lot of things like that in Spain and like South America. I have friends that live on sailboats, and that's another cool thing. It's like squatting the ocean. There's like the nautical laws, like you don't really have to abide by them. You can go anywhere you want with the wind. It's really cool. I live on a sailboat with a dog and a piano player right now.
In the back?
Yeah, I was curious in terms of the ground score, and Michael could share more about how, not only how you connected, but how you kept in touch with one another. And you touched a little bit on it, ground score, I think, in terms of, you know, we're all so connected with social media and such. Like, what does that look like for you? Like, how do you connect and keep connected within community with one another if it's not through the internet? Does that make sense?
Yeah. For me, with how the project evolved was always with initially meeting someone and then running into them again and running into them again and running into them again. No matter where you go in the United States, there's always going to be a place where travelers will end up being. Like in New York City, for example, in the 90s it was Tompkins Square Park, and then it became Union Square, and now it's
Like the East Side, Lower East Side.
Lower East Side, also Coney Island, exactly. So things shift and change, and the same in Chicago and New Orleans and New Orleans. But no matter where you go, Seattle or Haight-Ashbury on the edge of Golden Gate Park, and these are no secrets, right?
I've done my time there.
Right. So there's pockets and spots, and so as I was traveling around the United States, I would find travelers and be like, oh my God, I haven't seen you for 3 years. You can see what's going on in social media. You can write messages to one another. You can keep in touch. But that human time together is always very specific. And when you're making a portrait of someone, the phones are gone. You're connecting. You're waiting for the facial expression to drop. You're trying to get to that true person. And so that's kind of like a bonding experience, I would say. What do you think about how you keep in touch with everyone else?
I just got a phone number for the first time in 6 years. So the past like 6 years, I've just been a Wi-Fi goblin. been going on like the library computer, sending emails. You know, I'd hate to be arrested because I'm so bad at memorizing phone numbers. But yeah, it was just mostly just chance. I would just go hang out with my friends until we all get sick and tired of each other and we want to like tear each other's heads off, and then I'd go off on my own for a couple months and go hang out with another friend group. But if it's like, you know, if they're your friends or your lovers, if it's meant to be, the universe will pull you guys together and make sure you guys stick together.
There's also something to be said for the concept of being off the grid. I had an older traveler tell me that when she ran away in the 90s, this didn't exist. There was no, you know, social media, no way to interact, and so when she left home, there was no way that her family knew where she was. She was completely off of the grid, and that feeling of just not being reachable, finding things, the freedom of that, casting everything aside, you are literally off of the grid. And think in your own life, like, how are we ever off of the grid? Can we ever not be found? And that's where all of this social media, it's obviously a great tool, but at the same time, it's suffocating in some ways. You think so?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, that's great.
I'm really interested in how we use public space, and you know what spaces are truly public. Sometimes they're not owned by the public sector. There's privately owned spaces that become gathering places. We all kind of get kind of like fed up with the commercial space, the tourist space, and like where do we go to just sit and be out of it. And you know, one time I hiked into Skagway, Alaska, and I asked people where to camp, and they said anywhere. Camp anywhere there's an open lot. And that was years ago. But you know, the alley is a space. I love the way it's used, and I can't argue against the hotel project that's going to happen there. But I'm just wondering if you have any reaction to that idea of how we protect public space for all different types of people.
The assimilation of artists. They can't get rid of our neutral grounds if we're there all the time. You know, if we're there making art and breathing life into the community. Like, yeah, you might be able to get rid of the alley and build something else, but we're still gonna find that's our spot. For some reason, that weird triple crossroad is the spot to be and play music. I don't know why, but that's what the magic tells me. And like, well, we will always find a way. It's always like a constant problem in the traveling community. No matter where you go, somebody's always gonna try to assert their dominance on you and be like, hey, I own this little piece of the sidewalk, can you please fucking get away, or I'm gonna call the cops. Like, I'm not afraid to stand my ground anymore. In New Orleans, I'm literally a human barricade. We asked for 5 hours, just scraps of a pedestrian wall on Royal Street, and I've been harassed by the police. I've been have typewriters kicked over. You know, I've been threatened multiple occasions, but I don't really care. I'll go out there every day from the hours 11 to 6, and 11 to 9 on the weekends, and sit there in front of the barricade so nobody can drive. You know.
I'll tell you a quick story too, is when I first met a lot of travelers, they would tell me, oh, you know, I'm in New Orleans and I ended up having to go to jail because they wrote me a ticket for imitating a sidewalk. I was like, what? And they're like, imitating a sidewalk. And again, you're like, that's not true. In your head, you know, that's not possible until someone pulls out the ticket and says, imitating a sidewalk. And I have a photograph of that. And I was like, this is insane. So not remembering that a year later, I was sitting on the sidewalk with a traveler, either chatting, I was sharing food or whatever it happened to be, and up comes a cop and he's like, you gotta get out of here. I'm like, I'm sitting on the sidewalk. He's like, yeah, but you gotta get out of here. And I'm thinking to myself, I, for that time, felt, you know, in that moment, what you're feeling, where it's like, if I wasn't with a traveler sitting there, no one would have come up and said anything to me. I was literally just sitting on the sidewalk. That was it.
Yeah, they don't yell at the tourists in San Francisco before COVID. They had the no sit, no lie law. And it was from like the hours of like 9 to 10, and I was sitting down at 9:59, and I got like a ticket, and I almost got arrested.
Yeah.
Like I love talking to the police. I'm not afraid to tell them to talk. 'Cause I know my rights as a traveler and as a human being.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's some really fucking crazy, really bad laws out there. But luckily, New Orleans isn't really like that anymore. But they are going to be cracking down for the Super Bowl. They're doing a bunch of really bad things on the homeless community there right now. Where are the artists going to go when you sweep them out of the cities? You know, everything's just going to look the same eventually.
Take one more.
Hey, so this is kind of an amalgamation of thoughts I've collected throughout this lovely presentation. I want to kind of circle back to one of the first things that you talked about, which was the definition of a traveler and how you define the subculture of folks that are in your book. And earlier y'all were talking about sort of how social media collides into this community and culture. And I kind of wanted to ask, how do you feel, what separates a traveler from someone who is doing van life for social media, or someone who is taking the opportunity to buy a van and do remote work for, you know, like the same sort of corporation you would do indoor office work for? What separates those types of people from this subculture, and do you feel that these evolutions are like, is it a natural evolution or is it gentrification of a subculture? Like, there has to be more to it. Is it politics, philosophy, like the longevity of your plan, settling into the lifestyle? Like, what do y'all think? What separates those things?
Great question. I feel like the spirit of the traveler is kind of like almost casting everything aside to say, you know, to have that sense of ultimate freedom. And I feel like the people who are still remotely working from home are still stuck in society's box, right? They're still grabbing that paycheck, working as hard as they can, working themselves to the bone. Whether you have the best job in the world or the crappiest job in the world, you could be working for a minimum wage, whatever it is, but you're still on the wheel, right? So I think the traveler is that initial spirit of just saying, like, I have that completely free life, and it's going to come with consequence at the same time, I feel. So I see where that's taking it, but I still think it's that initial intention of, I need to get out of here. I can't wake up anymore and go to this crappy job. I have to find who I am. I need to get out of here, and then once I do that, maybe I can cycle back around. I don't know. It's the spirit of it. I think that's what defines like the traveler.
I personally believe that there's like this weird underlying magic of the universe, and it's like, if you're truly meant to be out here, like, you're meant to be out here. There's no way you're going back. And like, the universe puts you through some crazy tests when you first hit the road. Like, you learn a lot about yourself and the people around you and the people that you surround yourself with. And some of these tests will either make you or break you as a person. Like, you'll go back home crying and like more broken as a person you've ever be, or you'll go to the next city like triumphant and just like high on this crazy sort of essence of life. Like, I just overcame this. Where's the next victory? Where am I going next? Like, the road, it weeds some people out, especially like the van lifers. Like, some of those kids will show up in some of these crazy places in New Orleans, and like, they're all talk on social media, and they show up at the punk house, and there's like all this really crazy stuff going on, and some of these kids can't hang out, and they start freaking out. And it's like, yo, they've been living this for like 30 years. Like, you can't teach little dogs new tricks. Like, just gotta let them do it. Just, you know, have some Narcan and stuff. You know, like, the road definitely, like, the will of the road will weed the ill-intended souls out.
Well,
Before we end, I just two quick things. One, I just wanted to ask you, Michael, because I thought that was really interesting at the 20 Summers event when you were talking about, just very quickly, about your makeshift studios out of the streets. I found that fascinating. A lot of people were commenting about that. Could you just briefly mention how you do this when you're not in an actual studio in Boston or somewhere else? You're out and about with people.
Sure. One of what I love is portraiture, right? And so you have to with street portraiture, just approach strangers, and then in the moment you're trying to figure out where the light is and figure out how you can make a portrait. But one of the reasons that, if you look in the book, the portraits are very stark and plain, I wanted to focus on the person. So how are you on the street, but able to make a portrait that's singular and has good lighting? How does that all work? So I found that using doorways, blank spaces, walls, where the light was bouncing, if you put someone in a corner, or even take another person and have them stand next to that person, which you're never going to see on camera, that's wearing a black shirt, it's a light absorber. So it's all these principles that you learn in studio portraiture, you can actually do right on the street. And everyone thinks, oh, there must be someone holding a reflector, there must be 3 people there, you must have lighting with you. But the reality is it's all made in the moment, right on the street. However it happens to be. I may move someone around, you know, like, oh, we gotta go here, gotta go there.
You gotta find whatever works.
Right, find whatever works. But it's still really in the moment, because 3 hours from then, the lighting is gonna change, and that corner or doorway you wanted to use is not gonna be the same. So, and I made a rule, I had to make do with what I had. So it's about finding a milk crate, finding a stool, finding a step, finding an old can, finding, you know, wood pallets and stacking them up, having travelers put their backpacks on top of one another for me. It's all really happening in the moment to make that portrait work. So that's how I photograph, and people think it looks like a studio. Great, that's my intention, but it's actually made, you know, just in the moment.
And we'll conclude, and I just want to have you not leave yet, because I just very quickly want to mention something after we get off the recording. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Thank you. Thank you.